Hello everyone, my name is Alex and I'm the marketing coordinator here at General Assembly. I just want to welcome you all here tonight and thank you for coming out. We know it's a really hard commute. So tonight we have an amazing life coach, Michelle, who's going to be talking to you about how to identify some of the things that get in your way of taking action. So I really would like to thank you again for coming to Stop Thinking and Start Doing, and I'll hand it off to Michelle. Enjoy.
Right. So first of all, thank you so much for coming. It's such a cold, drizzly night, so it's amazing that you've actually got here. So that's the first step in taking action. Now, this talk is called Stop Thinking and Start Doing. I think it should be called Stop Overthinking, because sometimes we have to think about certain things, and it's important. But what we tend to do is we assume that the gap between where we are and where we want to be is a lack of knowledge. So we do more research, take more online programs, but it doesn't seem to get us started. And for me, one of the most important things is your mindset. Once your mindset is clear and you develop a desire for what you want and you start taking action, the knowledge just comes easily. So I want to talk to you a little bit tonight about, and we've only got an hour, and in fact, I aim to get to the core of what thinking is stopping you from getting from where you are to where you'd like to be. So my name is Michelle Atias, as I was introduced before. I'm a mindset expert, I'm a coach, and as of this week, I'm an author. What I'd like to do tonight is I'd like to give you, I'd like to start off by speaking a little bit about my own personal story. Then I want to talk a little bit about mindset, overthinking, how it impacts us. I'd like you to do some exercises because I'd like to get you moving a little bit and taking a little bit of action. And then I'm going to give you 4 ways to go from overthinking to doing. And then what I'd like to do is I'd like to finish off and leave it open for questions. So if you've got any questions, I'd love you to leave it till the end. I will encourage sharing as I'm speaking, but I would also love to leave the questions until the end. Before I start though, and I can see that more people are coming in, there's a couple of things. First of all, we've got a lovely videographer, Gabriel, at the very back of the room, and he's just waving there. Gabriel is videoing tonight's talk, so it'll hopefully be on YouTube in the next couple of weeks. And this is great because if you don't, sometimes when you watch something in a couple of weeks, you kind of get some other insight from it. So he's going to be videoing the talk. But if there is something personal that you're not sure whether to share or not, just be aware that it is being videoed. So, if you're not comfortable being filmed, maybe sit at the back. So just be aware there is somebody filming. And the next thing is, what would be great is if you either put your phones on silent or switch them off. That would be really, really great because that allows you to be more present to our hour together and get much more from it. Unless you work for the emergency services or you're a doctor and you really need to be on call, then it would be great if you could put your phones on silent. Okay, so I can see, as I said, more people arriving. So it's a cold, drizzly, dark night. And I would love to know, what have you come here to get tonight? I've got a couple of previous clients here, which I'm always happy to see. And they know that when I work with people, I work not from the surface level, but I like to go underneath and really get to the core of what's getting in the way of what they want to create. So I'd love to know, more than anything, it's important to set an intention for what you want for this hour, rather than, okay, I'll see what I get out of it. Is there anybody here who has come to, or would like to share, something specific you'd like to get from tonight? Anybody want to share? Great, well, maybe as time goes on, it will be revealed to you what you wanted to get out of tonight. Okay, so I'm going to start with my personal story, just a short version of it. I was born in Gibraltar, which is the south of Spain. I lived there till I was about 18 years old. And then I went to live in Israel for 3 years. And then I came to live in the UK. Now, when I reflect on my journey, and especially through overthinking, I really realized that when things needed to get done, it was done. The thinking kind of parted so that I could just do what needed doing. So 20 years ago, I was a single parent. I had a 3-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. I was divorced. And I was bringing up my 2 girls on my own. I decided to embark on becoming a psychotherapist. I was studying for 4 years. I was working a couple of jobs so I could do my clinical hours, and I was also running something from home so I could get a bit of a salary as well. Now, I don't remember at any point feeling overthinking, or do I have enough confidence to do this? Do I have enough self-esteem to bring up my kids? It had to be done. It simply had to be done. There was no time to overthink or reflect over it. And when I think about that whole journey, and as my kids got older and there was more time on my hands and things weren't as urgent, I noticed that the thinking came back in. So I was already a therapist. I was already working in a clinic. My kids were already growing up. Nothing was as urgent. I didn't have as much of a desire, and I didn't have when my kids were really little, I had, I wanted to become a professional. I wanted to be a great role model to them. So that's what pushed me through that overthinking. The moment that all finished, I went back to doubtful thoughts, being hesitant before going for something. So I got really curious about all these, because we are here, we want to get there. So we have to navigate this journey. And then we have overthinking, we have our beliefs, we have our limitations. And that all seems to get in the way of where we want to go. So I got even more curious about it. And I thought about, during the war, First and Second World War, there was no time to overthink. There was no time to procrastinate. You didn't have to think, I need some more self-belief to launch a missile. I need some more confidence to attack. You had a belief in your country and you just did it. But yet, what I find most of my clients come to me for is this hesitation, this overthinking, this procrastination, this I need to wait till this happens before I can actually take any action. And so there's this waiting around, and there's this just waiting for something to happen. So they take more courses, and courses are really, really important. Information is important. Research on some level is really, really important. But not if that's what you preoccupy yourself with and you aren't taking the action. So for example, I have always wanted to write a book. Always. But I had all this thinking about it. My book needs to be perfect. English is my second language. So my English needs to be almost like a Shakespearean level. My grammar needs to be perfect. And who's going to buy it? I need to know who's going to buy it before I can go for it. And last year I decided, right, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to push ahead and I'm going to do this. So I joined some online program, some online 30-day program where you committed to a 30-day, you were going to take an action over 30 days and you were going to write your book in that time. So last April, I decided, okay, 1st of April, I'm going to sit down, and the first couple of days were excruciatingly painful. I couldn't get the words out. I had committed to 50,000 words by the end of the month. The interesting thing was, because I had that time in which I had to finish it, what I did was I carved out 1 hour each day, 8 to 9 a.m. each day, to write my book. By the end of the 30 days, the 50,000 words was written. My book was written. It was imperfect. It was a draft, but it was written. And then I thought, okay, what's next? Okay, what's next is I've got to find an editor. When I found an editor, worked with him for a while, okay, what's next? I need to go get a publisher. So, less than a year later, my book came out. Look Inside, Stop Seeking, Start Living. And that came out on Amazon today. So less than a year. So, and this isn't a sales pitch at all. If you buy the book, or even if you see this cover on social media, just remember, this will be a reminder for you, that this person wrote it 1 hour a day of time that I carved out. I moved distractions. Nobody dared disturb me during the 8 to 9 a.m. None of my coaching clients suffered because I was with them the rest of the day. But that time in the day was precious. Because I had developed a desire. I was done with playing small. I'd been writing articles for years on different online platforms, and people kept asking me, when are you going to write your book? And I was crippled with fear. So I just went and did it because I developed a desire. And yes, self-doubt has developed all the way through this past year, hugely up till even today when it was published. But you can feel self-doubt, and you can feel fear, and you can still do it. You can still do it on 1 hour of the day. So the question is, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to do to get what you want? And more importantly, if you could carve out 1 hour a day to do something, what would you do? What would you get started on? It might be a side business you want to create. It might be a new job that you want to go for. It might be something. It might even be that you want to go in a new relationship. And that takes time to dedicate. It could be anything. You don't have to be the next Richard Branson. You just have to get started on a tiny percentage every day. It feels less overwhelming and it's achievable. So this is it, isn't it? It's really starting small. And in a sense, it's about getting really clear about what we're willing to do, developing a desire for what we want, and skimming away what's getting in the way of that. I remember I think it was last year, I watched this beautiful program about 6 people who had unfortunately been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And each one, although sad to say goodbye to their families, was saying they had never, ever been as productive as they had been during those few months of their life. The year before, one of the people on the program, the year before that, was going to set up a Facebook group for her business. And she was too embarrassed. She was too shy to do it. Maybe the photo wasn't going to look so great. Maybe the neighbors would make fun of her. She had all this hesitation. A year later, when diagnosed, she couldn't care less. She set up a page within a day because she wanted to set up a charity. And that was super important to her. And there was no more thinking. It was like, let's just do it. I don't care anymore. Now, it was the same person a year earlier, but with a sense of urgency. Now things are different. And that's what we tend to do. We tend to wait till an emergency happens. Till there's a divorce, a bankruptcy, till we're made redundant, there's a bereavement, and then we take action because we're pushed to that point. But what if we could do it already? What if we could start examining our thinking that is getting in the way? Because you see, as I said before, thinking is great. It's important to get information. We have about 60,000 thoughts every day. About 48 thoughts every minute. Some of them are really helpful, but some of them really are not. Some of them keep us exactly where we are. And so what I'd like to do today is I'd like to get clear about what thoughts those thoughts are that are getting in the way, that are keeping you stuck. So we might all have a playlist of thoughts. I always, as I said before, some of them are really helpful, but some of them are not. And I see them at times like a pack, and there's always the leader of that pack that keeps coming up when we're about to create something. And it could be, I'm not good enough, it's never going to work. Who the hell's going to want me? It could be anything. You'll have your own playlist. I have my own playlist of when I go to the gym. I have a playlist of music there. I have a playlist of music when I write. I have a playlist of music when I'm working. But we also have a playlist of music from when we're about to embark on something. Playlist of thoughts. The minute we're going to do something that's out of our comfort zone, it comes in. And it keeps us exactly where we are. And thoughts, the thoughts that we have create our feelings and create our experience in the moment. So if you're feeling anxious, it means that you're getting anxious thinking with all sorts of different dialogues about it. My kids will be ashamed of me. I'm going to lose everything. My wife's going to leave me. All of that's playing at the back of it. It all brings up anxiety. Our body feels anxious because it's being powered by our thinking. And then our experience is one of anxiety. And the decisions we make from that place come from a sense of urgency and anxiety. So it's important to know what thoughts are playing out in our mind, because we're acting on it all the time. And we don't have to. With 60,000 thoughts we have every day, we cannot think about, okay, let's go make them positive thoughts now. Let's turn them into positive. We can't become the thought police and arrest each one of them and tell them to go away. But we can be aware that it comes in and it comes out, and it comes in and it comes out. What sometimes happens is that we invite it in, we make it a cup of tea, we invite it to stay the night, and then it stays. And then we stay exactly where we are with that thought, with that parrot thought going on and on and on. And then we wonder why we're stuck. So what I'd love you to do now is I'd love us to do a small exercise, okay? Because I'd love to get those thoughts out. Because I find that when we begin to get them out, it loses somehow its power. So what I'd love you to do is to get into pairs, and then I'll let you know what else you need to do. And we're going to share for 3 minutes each. But if you get into pairs, and if there's somebody who doesn't have a pair, then just please put your hand up and let me know. So if you'd like to get into pairs. I loved how interactive you all were. It was like you came to life, all of you. This is amazing. Who would like to share what came up? Anybody would like to share something that came up for you? Maybe you didn't expect it, or just something that you wanted to share with anybody else. Because remember, when you share something, it might be that somebody in the audience is also dealing with the same thing, and you could really help them by sharing your experience. Yeah?
Cool. So it was actually the third point I got to, so it wasn't top of mind. But something that I feel is a barrier to getting the priorities done, unless on my list, is I work in digital marketing and end up spending quite a lot of time upskilling or educating people or being seen as someone to go to for information.
Yes.
And I really love doing that, but it takes my attention away from the jobs that need to be done. It has benefits in the long term, and you can see people getting on board with what what the vision and strategy might be. But it takes
so
attention
you see
away.
that as something that's getting in the way?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. Is it that boundaries maybe you need to create?
Yeah, I guess having a clearer process, or it's that word, but having clearer rules around what is and isn't possible in that space of upskilling or education, or whatever you want to call it.
Brilliant, that's really helpful. And actually, one thing I didn't say is that I'm going to gift somebody tonight my first copy of the book, and it's going to go to you for sharing, being the first person to share tonight. So come later and I will sign it for you. I forgot I should have mentioned that. Right, that's fantastic, thanks. Anybody else would like to share something that came up for them? That's really helpful. Yeah?
I guess from our conversation, it was clear that we resonate with your comment about having a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
But it was also having what we said was too much choice, but not in the sense of having so many options, but that you have your attention diverted similarly as you discussed. And we kind of problematized the idea of priorities, because I think if you asked everybody here what were the top 3 things that were most important, you could say it. But it's almost as if your attention is diverted even when you're doing the things that you need to do to either survive or the necessities of the short and medium term.
Yes.
So I think there's a disconnect. 'Cause I reckon a lot of people in here are probably working full time, want to start a company as well, and there's loads of other stuff. So it's like there is not time actually in the sort of, how would you say, literal time. But when it comes to like the time to actually work on your vision, I think it's
Yes.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 different types of time.
And that's really helpful, and I'm glad you mentioned that. But I think we make time. You carve out time, and you put it as if you had to schedule a meeting with a really important guy, you would put it in your diary. If you would be going away to America for a couple of weeks, you would put in your diary that your flight leaves at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you would make sure that time is blocked off so you're at the airport. It's just that we don't make the time. And then we say we don't have time, but then we spend a lot of time on watching TV, on Facebook, Instagram, and I love all of those things, absolutely. But I also understand that it sucks me away from what I really want. Because it takes up our mind, and it takes up a lot of energy, and it's so we have to carve out that time. We make a decision and we make a commitment. I'm going to commit to creating this in the next 6 months, and I'm going to carve half an hour in my lunch break to do that, or an hour to do that every single day. There's no excuse for that. There really isn't. So of course, we talk about literal time and everybody's busy. People are busy. But in a way, that's why I asked everybody to switch their phones off, because it can, the phone, the WhatsApp, the messages, it just feels even busier than what it should be. We're inundated all the time. So remember that it's about setting a commitment, developing a desire. Because as I said, if you had to set a meeting with somebody that's really important, you would make sure you were there. So you are setting a meeting with yourself to make sure that you get what you want, and that this thing doesn't happen from year to year. You're wondering, well, when's life going to change? So you have this default life that takes you God knows where. Have a more intentional life, which is why I asked everybody at the beginning of the talk, what have you come here for? That's what life's all about. What am I here for? Am I here to just drift through? Or am I here because I have an intention? This is where I want to get to. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I want to get there. I had no idea 5 or 6 years ago I'd be here today. I was a psychotherapist then in a tiny clinic in northwest London. I had no idea I could be a speaker here, that I could coach amazing people. I've spoken internationally. I've just written a book. I write for lots of online platforms with a huge readership. What did I ever know? But I knew I wanted more than what I had. That's all I knew. And I committed some time with 2 daughters on my own. So it's not like I had a very hunky-dory life. I wasn't born in London. It's not like I have family here. So, it wasn't easy, but we have to develop a desire and see it through with a commitment and push aside what's getting in the way. If it's thinking, then push it aside. And people sometimes think, well, once I'm more confident, I'll do it. Once I have more self-belief, I'm going to work on my self-belief. What if you could get into action, even if you don't believe in yourself? Do you think I, had much belief in myself when I wrote the book? I had huge amounts of self-doubt. You don't have to wait for anything. You can just do it, even if you feel completely low, even if you feel like you are, like this little ant in the middle of the world. It doesn't matter. Just do it. Or don't. It's a choice. Anybody else would like to share? Okay, so I'm going to do another little exercise. The same thing, but I'd like to ask you another question. With the same pair, I noticed that a couple of people came in, so obviously you've joined another group, which is great, thank you. So what I'd like you to ask yourself, imagine if those thoughts, beliefs, and limitations weren't there. What would you be doing, and how would life be different? So imagine that wasn't there. So let's bring some possibility into it. What would you be doing, and how would life be different? And you can choose who's going to share first. You could do the same thing as you did before, and you have 3 minutes each, okay? So get started. Brilliant. I love the energy. That's amazing. Amazing. I love the fact that that you're all interacting. Would anybody like to share what came up? Anybody want to put their hand up and share? Hey.
Okay. So it's following from the session for exercise 1. So the first exercise. So kind of like things stop me from doing it. Like I always feel like
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
hello. Because I always feel like English is not my first native language. I have so many assignments like coming out in the school, and this thing stops me from trying. Like I always feel like it's not writing skill. It's not like my strength. So I don't like inside. I always feel like I don't have much confidence. It's because I feel like it's always not good enough. So putting things together or starting writing. So I feel like if I start writing something, maybe it's not smart enough. So I just worry too much things. So yeah. So that's really prevents me from trying at the first place. And during the conversation with Steam, so we also explore a good idea. Actually, find out it's like by thinking about this confidence issue, maybe I have I don't feel like strong enough. But also, Dee was asking me, do I feel like more comfortable actually if I started writing my first native language like Mandarin in writing first, and then maybe translate to the English. And then actually I just realized I just hate writing in general. So
That's amazing.
No
you don't have to love writing.
So Dean actually was giving me a very good suggestion. Said, have you ever thought about the voice notes app? I said, yeah, maybe I can look into that. So she was telling me that maybe I can just by talking, recording my words, and then this app thing will automatically transfer or translate to the words. Yes. So yeah, I think this is a tool that I can definitely explore that.
Definitely, and that's something to explore. So you've picked something up tonight, and I really get what you're saying. English is not my first language either. And I had huge amounts of thinking about when I began to become a psychotherapist, and I had to do essays, and oh my God, I was so scared because my whole life in school, in primary school especially, I was told I was stupid, I couldn't communicate properly. That came back in my mind. I can't do this, I can't do this. So I really get that. But what if it didn't matter? What if it just came to the point where I thought, well, I don't really care. I just want to express what I want to express. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it can connect with people. Or so it might get to the point where you just get over yourself. And you get over the fact that, that English isn't your first language. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And maybe you're not a writer. Maybe you don't like it, but you're great at other things. So then you'll find tools to help you with what with what you find a little bit difficult. But I really get that. It's hard because there's a lot of thinking about that, isn't it?
Yes, because I don't mind to write journal things. I can write any shit there. I don't care about grammar, vocabulary. But assignments, school assignment, academic way, oh my God, that's completely different way. So I have to think about writing smart. So that's actually creates more stress, and physically I feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
And stops me from doing that.
Yes, and that's totally understandable. But can you see that your thinking is powering your feeling of overwhelm? is powering how you're experiencing this whole thing that you've got to do in college or whatever. So your thinking is telling you it has to be good enough. You know, English is not my first language. I have to do it right. It's never going to be enough. And so it's driving its own engine. It's creating its own movie. And it's like Silence of the Lambs. It's not even Gone with the Wind. It's like Silence of the Lambs. And then you feel it. So you see, your thinking powers your feeling. And then you start feeling overwhelmed. And now you can't do it. And it stops your creativity. And then your experience in that moment is you can't do it. You can't go there. So I really get that. And sometimes about just acknowledging this is what's going on. And what if it didn't matter? What if I could just express what's true for me right now? And maybe get some feedback from your mentors in your where you study. How could you get better at something? You know, get some feedback, but also always from that place of expressing rather than anything else, of stress and overwhelm. But always think, when you're getting that overwhelm, think, okay, what's the thinking that's powering this? Because it's always powering it. Your feeling isn't in a vacuum. It's being powered by this, okay? Anybody else? Wow, you've really all got it sorted. I think I'm going to have to come to you for coaching. Brilliant. Oh, fantastic. Oh, Amal. So lovely to see Amal.
Here, thank you. My question is more about limited beliefs and overthinking. I always used to get confused, thinking or I used to think like limited belief and overthinking is the same. But recently I realized overthinking is something different, and limited belief, it's totally in another deeper level. And in my experience, I've noticed most of the self-belief started from the childhood, of the things that you've been, people been telling you, or you've heard from your friends or from your family, or even from your teachers, and you never knew that what they said to you, if it's right or wrong. So you believed it. Yeah. So someone at some point planted some sort of idea in your head, which completely is not true and is hidden back in your subconscious. So you continue moving and going on and then believing that you're not good enough, or you're not perfect, or you can't do this, or you can't achieve this, because that particular event happened at some point. And that causes a lot of overthinking, of course, whenever you want to achieve something. So for you to get rid of this limited self-belief, how far you need to go and how long does it take?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Amal. Do you know what happened to me? The moment I knew it wasn't serving me and getting to where I wanted to get to, it just kind of dropped. So in a way, we have to remember that at some point in our childhood, and I'm not going to do a therapeutic piece. As a psychotherapist, I would have delved well into your childhood and seen the damaged and broken and fragmented child. I don't do that anymore. I just know that at some point in childhood, something got planted, like what you're saying. I was told by a teacher, and in fact, it's the first chapter in my book, because I just had to say it. I think it was my revenge to her. At 4 years old, I was told by a teacher, primary school, I was told, you're never going to make anything of yourself. Now that stuck with me for over 30 years. When I went to university to study therapy, in a million years did I think I could study, or I just didn't believe myself capable. It stuck in my mind, because what happens is that as a child, something gets stuck, a belief gets stuck, and then it kind of stays. And we don't realize that we're now 40 or 50 or even 30 for some of you, and we're still acting from that place. But it's no longer relevant. It might have been relevant at 5, but it's no longer relevant at 35. But we're still living it. We just have to be aware of it, because it doesn't serve you. If you've got a 5-year-old child or a 2-year-old child powering your decisions, it's not going to lead to great results, is it? I mean, think about any 2-year-old or 5-year-old. Would you leave them in charge of your life? Probably, well, I certainly wouldn't, but probably not. So that's what happens. Sometimes it's that child part of ourselves that is still powering those decisions. And for me, what I like to do with my clients, I want to take them to that child, but that child that was pre that belief coming in. So what was life like before that thought came into play? What was life like? Who were you then? Were you creative, spontaneous, fun? So many of my clients have forgotten how to have fun. They've forgotten how to be alive, really be alive. They're spiritually dead. You know, they work hard, they're successful, some of them. But I want to take them back to who they were before that thought came into play, or that belief, that limited belief came into play. Who were they? And go back and bring that out, because that often gets forgotten. So does that answer your question, Emma? Okay.
I think the best part when you said we don't need to go all the way, because sometimes when we go all the way back, we get stuck.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Rather moving forward, just keep trying to fix everything, all the damages, and
You know, it won't serve you if you just keep staying in the past.
Just know that that voice is a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old. It's a child. That's all. It's being powered by a child. And it's keeping you safe. It keeps you in your comfort zone, and it keeps you exactly where you are. That's all. Anybody else wants to share? Okay. Brilliant. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you, because I've given you a bit of a reflection piece, and now I just want to give you 4 ways that you could get into action. We've obviously got a very small amount of time today. I've only got an hour. So I want to give you 4 ways to get more, go more from thinking into doing, okay? So the first one is be aware of the language that you use. I know it's something really simple and small, but be aware of the language that you use, because our language can either express possibility or express a dead end. So when we speak, often we use words like I can't, I mustn't, I shouldn't, or I need to. And that brings up this huge stress and even more thinking. And what you could shift that to is I choose to, I don't choose to, I want to, or I don't want to. We feel different. We feel more in leadership. And I find that language creates our world. How we speak is kind of where we tend to head to. So I was writing a novel a couple of years ago. I never finished it. But I was doing a dialogue between characters. And I noticed, and this was really interesting for me, was that I noticed that when I changed the dialogue of the characters, especially the main character, I had to change the next scene in the story, because the scene and the dialogue just kind of didn't match. So when you think about the kind of words that come out of your mouth, I need to, I have to, I must, I should, all those words are words that are driven by a particular engine of need, must, have to, stress, overwhelm. Think about using words, as I said before, like should, like choose, I don't choose to, I want to, I don't want to. Because that shifts everything. It's a tiny little tweak, but it does shift. So that's, first thing was your language. Second thing is, if you're going to embark on something, cut it into manageable chunks. So we don't eat a meal all at once. We eat the hors d'oeuvre, then we have the main course, and we'll have the dessert, for some of you. So when you cut things in manageable chunks, it relieves the overwhelm that we sometimes feel when we're about to do something. So I had a client a while back who wanted to buy a property. And he literally came to coaching because he wanted to buy a property, because he had so much anxiety before going to the estate agent that he couldn't see himself ever buying one. And that was part of his plan. So he came to me for coaching, and he was telling me how anxious he was when coming to the estate agent. I said to him, forget about the estate agent. Just forget about it for now. Here's what I'd like you to do. Take a Sunday, maybe take some friends with you, maybe take some family members. Go drive to a couple of the areas, maybe have a pub lunch somewhere, make it fun. See where you'd like to live first. How about that? So he did that. He was actually very receptive to my suggestions. So he went and he looked around the area, and he called me a couple of days later, and he said, you know what? I love this area. And I'm going to give you a random area only because I want to protect his identity. He said, I love St. John's Wood. This is where I want to buy my property. I said, okay, that's great. What's next? He said, actually, I think I'm going to have to go speak to a mortgage advisor. Okay, when are you going to do that by? And he said, well, Wednesday afternoon. Okay, text me when you've done it. I said, okay, when he did that, I said, well, what's next? And he said, well, I think I'm going to have to speak to my bank. So it was a what's next and what's next and what's next. And he just naturally came to kind of, they had a flow to it. To cut a long story short, the last piece of the puzzle was to actually turn up at the estate agent. Literally. So he was thinking of doing that first with huge overwhelm. It was actually the last piece. By the time he got to the estate agent, he was so excited. He knew where he wanted to live. He knew, where he was going to do his mortgage. He knew how much money he had to spend. Within 6 weeks, he exchanged on his first property, and he could not believe how easy it had all been. He made it into this huge mountain. He was waiting for years to buy this first property. So think about what you would like to embark on. Maybe you're thinking 10 stages along the line. Maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you can just think about today. What's my next step required for today? And then take the next. And then take the next. So that's the second thing. The third thing is look back at your most recent successes. So for example, you're about to embark on something and you start to get a lot of doubtful thinking. It's never going to work, I'm not that good at it. This exercise is really good for those days when self-doubt comes in. So imagine yourself that you are in a courtroom and you've been asked to submit evidence that you are good enough to do what you're about to embark on. So you surely would have to bring letters from ex-employers, maybe an email somebody sent you that you did some fantastic work with them once when you did a business proposal for them maybe. So you gather up evidence. Maybe you've even done some voluntary work somewhere and you did a brilliant job. So what you do is you gather the evidence of testimonials you might have had, of people that might have written to you and told you, you did something really great. This is a great way to, when self-doubt strikes, it's a great way to really know that you're great to embark on what you're about to embark on. So just collate this information. So yeah, of course I can do this. So when the thinking comes in, you have evidence. So that's the third thing. The fourth and last thing is, if you can't get a coach, if you can't get a mentor, get an accountability partner. Places like these are amazing and heaving with amazing people who want to grow. So if you got on well with your partner tonight, then, this is a great way that you can set accountability, text each other during the week, hey, how's your thinking going? Or what did you take action on? Something, but get yourself something that keeps you in line with what you want. It's really, really important. I remember a few years ago, I went to this Tony Robbins conference, a 3-day event, Unleash Your Power. And as with Tony Robbins events, the first night was a fire walk. And of course I was super brave. I thought, yeah, sure, I'm going to do it. And he partnered us off with somebody. And I thought, why would we need a partner? Of course I'm going to do this. That's what I'm here for. So we were partnered off, and there's 8,000 people walking at the Excel Centre on the other side of London in the freezing cold, barefoot. And I just, at one point, I thought, what the hell am I doing? There were 30 fires burning. I reached the front of the fire and I thought, I'm not doing this. There's no way in a million years, I'm going back. That's it. But the problem was, I had been partnered with somebody. And I couldn't leave him in the lurch, and I'm sure he couldn't leave me in the lurch either. We had to support each other. And so I ended up, I didn't want to, but I ended up walking in the fire. I was petrified. But you know what? When I did it, it felt amazing. It was fun. It was crazy. I ended up dancing with a bunch of people barefoot in the middle of the Excel Centre at midnight on a Friday night. I don't even know what I was doing. 8,000 people. But I would never have done it. I would have turned back. had I not had an accountability partner. Now, you might have your own fire to walk through. Sometimes setting up into something new feels like a fire that you have to walk on. And you want to turn back and say, actually, I don't want to do this. It's too hard. It's too much trouble. I think I'm going to revert back to who I was before. I don't want to do this. But now you've got somebody that you have to be accountable to. I don't think I would have done half of the things I've been doing in the past 2 years had I not had a coach, mentor, accountability people that are in my circle that push me. I don't think I would have done. So sometimes it's great to have somebody that can really make you accountable for what you want to create. So I'm going to finish off, and I actually want to open up for questions if anybody has any questions. So obviously, tonight we've been looking at overthinking. And you've done some, great exercise where you've all really been part of it. And you're going to have to navigate what thinking, beliefs, and limitations are getting in the way of where you are now to where you want to be. And you're going to have to find a way of navigating that. And at times it won't be easy, but there is so much support available. And so you've been an amazing audience tonight. Absolutely amazing. And what I'd like to finish off with is, obviously my book just came out today. If any of you want to buy it and read it, it'd be great if you could give a not testimonial, but a review for Amazon. That would be great. And also, if some of you are interested, as I finish off and before I start the questions, if some of you are interested in taking this further, I have 5 spaces available to give you a 30-minute diagnostic call to really get clear about what's getting in the way of what you want to create. So the only thing you need to do is to go along to my website, go on the contact form, complete it, and the 5 most engaging contact forms or emails that I receive, I will invite you to a call with me to really explore that further. So thank you very much for being such an amazing audience, as I said before. And we're now going to open it up for questions, if anybody has any questions. Oh, great.
So for an anxiety type person, if I have a to-do list, right, and my to-do list is like overwhelmed, it's like more and more. Okay.
So, hello. As an anxiety type person, so I have a long list for to-do list, and the thing I find troubles me is like the list is getting longer and longer, and so for the first step is already stopping for doing the list, and then my list is getting longer and longer. It's getting more stressed and overwhelmed. Then what's the best way actually for the approach for this kind of, for the anxiety type of person, because you want to get things done, and then it's like you just create a long list for the whole day, and then actually you realize, some of the things you can do tomorrow, but then you don't put the list on tomorrow, you put it on the whole day. It's just like you make the list really, really long, but you don't actually physically or contribute all your effort, or you're actually mentally not ready to finish that list, and then create how do you say, there's a term for the psychologists like cognitive behavior. So it's and then it's getting a bad loop. So how can I change this loop?
Well, I don't do the bad loop or the good loop. I just don't judge it as good or bad. I just judge it as what it is. So you're talking about the list being anxious. So you talked about the list bringing you a lot of anxiety. The anxiety is being powered again by your thinking. The feeling is not coming in a vacuum, so that's being powered by your thinking. But more so, when I do a to-do list, or when I speak to anybody who wants to do a to-do list, I tend to highlight only what needs to be done today. Just highlight what needs to be done today. You can always move the other stuff for tomorrow. You can have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and shift it so you have little bits for each day.
Can I ask you how many lists actually for your for today's list? How many items do you have?
Well, how many items would you like to have without feeling overwhelmed?
It's a good question. I don't know.
So that's it. It goes, what I do is not going to be what's going to work for you. I want to see what works for you. So how many items would you need on your list to not feel that overwhelm? Would it be 3 items, 5 items, 10 items?
So it's also like exercise or like exploration I should find out for myself, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what would not feel overwhelming? What's really going to serve you in getting through that list? Is it going to be to split it up or to highlight it? Really think about what's going to work for you. Because what you want to do is you want to relieve that overwhelm. Because that, I think, will make you more creative and just it'll be easier for you to work without having that overload.
Thank you very much.
Does that feel helpful?
Yes.
Great. Oh, thank you.
Taking an example of a book.
One second, question.
Taking an example of a book, you want to write a book, and you've done, let's say, 5 pages already, or 10 pages, 10 chapters, but then you kind of feel uninspired, you kind of think, oh, that's not really going the way that I kind of wanted to do it. At what point should you say, let's start again, let's cut my losses and do it all over and start, or is it better just to finish off and finish this book you're not really looking forward to completing anymore, or do you think you kind of lost your way of writing it?
Yes. When writing a book, I always find, I can only say from my own experience, write about something that inspires you, something that you really know about, something that you're really connected to. Don't write a book that you feel you should be writing. Write about something that inspires you, that you've lived, or that that you really know about. Even if it's a short book, it doesn't have to be a huge blockbuster. It could be something small but really informative to people and something that you really know about. And if you don't feel inspired, put yourself in spaces that inspire you. Think about the things that you love doing. I generally wrote my chapters when I was traveling, because that's where I feel happiest. So when I was traveling, after a dance class, after an exercise class, which I love, after taking my dog for a walk, loved it. I had such a great feeling from it. I felt inspired and I wrote. You'll find your own version of that. But if you're starting to write a book, again, think about something that you really know and that inspires you. Don't feel forced to write about something, because that's where the writing block comes in. You get stuck.
What if it actually inspires you, but somehow what you produce is no longer what you thought you had in mind? It's kind of thinking, this is not perfect. Should you just finish it, or just?
Well, what is your definition of perfection? That's really the question. When I wrote my book, I didn't know who the hell was going to read it. I just knew I loved writing the chapters that I wrote, and somewhere, even if one person read it and got value from it, then my job was done. So, you don't have to be putting the pressure that it has to be perfect, because your definition of perfect is not my definition of perfect. And when I thought about perfection, it kept me stuck for the longest time. Don't think about perfection. Don't think about impressing. Think about expressing. What do I want to express in the world? What have I lived? Or what value could I provide to the world that I could put on paper? And I could create a little book, even if it's a little e-book to start off with, and then take it to the next step. Yeah? Anybody else?
Hi. For me, one of my barriers is that I'm kind of a control freak, and I like to control everything. So, I spend a lot of time doing a lot of research, and I think it's prevent me to move forward. So, do you have any kind of really concrete advice to be able to let go in some way to move?
Well, the great news is you're a control freak. If you know you're a control freak, then half the battle's done. When you're telling yourself, I'm not a control freak, but then you're kind of putting everything out there. No, you're a control freak. That's great. You know it. And you also know it's not serving you. So if I was saying to you, if you put your hand on that fire, you're going to get burned. And you say, well, I know I'm going to get burnt, and you're putting it on, and you're putting it on, and you're putting it on. It's exactly what you're doing. You're saying, well, it doesn't really serve me to go and do research, but I still do it. But it's not serving me, but I still do it. Same as you're putting your hand on the fire. It's burning me, but I'm still doing it. It's not serving me, but I'm still doing it. It's the same thing. You know it's not serving you. Develop a desire for what you want to create. Develop a desire. And what is it going to be required? What's going to be required to move you from that control freak into just moving along and doing what the next thing that needs doing to create whatever it is that you want to create? And then look at what are you trying to control? Because sometimes we're trying to micromanage, and when we wake up to the fact that we have absolutely no control anyway, there's no security in the world, we have no control anyway. When we wake up to that, we think, well, what the hell? Let me just do what I need to do. So just develop a desire for what you want. And whatever doesn't serve you will drop. Okay? Anybody else before we finish? Hey.
It's not a question, but I just wanted to share with the guy who's so worried about being a control freak.
Fantastic.
Well, I'm really OCD organizing everything. So, the curtain has to look so freaking perfect, and the room has to look so... So I've challenged myself, and instead of putting the curtain like ideally perfect, I make it look so disgustingly not perfect. And guess what? I'm still alive in the morning. So try to do something. Yeah. So just like little things that are not really important, but then it just takes you out of like, oh, this is not like that, and it just allows you also to have more people in your space and be okay with that, and not like, don't you dare to bend my couch in that way, so just like little bit.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing that. Brilliant. So that's fantastic, and I love it when people share what's helpful to them. Anybody else before we finish? Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you very much for being such an amazing audience. Thank you.